tell us at the top. Yeah, here we go. So I'm here today with Glenn, and Glenn has got, I'm sure, lots of interesting questions to ask me about what we're doing at Matrix Freedom, Republic of Old Souls. Probably some things about my backstory and how I got here, because it's like it is for most of us who've woken up to the existence of the Matrix, and however deep you want to go into that, there's always something that sort of takes you out of your hypnotic state that most of us have been in at one stage. Gradually, you come out of that hypnotic state, and there's generally a cause. In my experience, most of our members have had something happen that has caused them to start waking up. And the waking up process isn't an overnight thing. You don't wake up in the morning and then everything gets into place. It's a very gradual journey for most, I believe. I don't know if you can hear that, Ken. I'm getting a lot of interference from something. So, are you hearing?
Yeah,
that?
I'm just adjusting the volume here because it is causing. There's some vibrations it's causing here. So let's just keep talking, and I'll see if I can adjust that. Yeah, everybody gets woken up one way or another, and so I'm sure that you have a story about that. And talk a little bit, and let's make sure that this interference you're talking about is gotten rid of here.
Yeah, the interference seems to have gone now. So whatever it was at the moment, it's good. I'm not getting the feedback, so hopefully the viewers aren't getting it either. So, I mean, it's like everybody. We've all got a sort of tipping point, I believe, where we start to wake up to what's going on out there. And I'm no different than many I've spoken to, but I think my story is different because of the situation I was in. I think my story is, certainly I've not spoken to anybody else who's got a similar backstory. Mine is fairly unique, I believe. And if you like, I'll go into my background, what I used to do, and what I'm doing now, and then the sort of 20-year journey I've been on, which has led us to where we are today with some pretty unique remedies to this problem, of the control system that we're all in, whether we know it or not, and also some solutions to what is yet to come from the control system, which a lot of people aren't even aware of what's to come yet, which of course you and I probably know what's to come. So we're only part of the way through the control agenda. It's nowhere near matured yet. So would you like me to go into how I got into, what was the tipping point and the journey?
Well, let me. I have a little introduction I'd like to do here, and then that's what I would like to do. But Ian Clifford is described as the most censored and persecuted man in the UK. Matter of fact, I don't like to use the word UK. That's the Vatican's empire over there in Britain. I like Britain better. Anyways, for over 2 decades, Ian Clifford has endured relentless targeting by UK authorities for exposing systemic fraud, financial manipulation, and crown misconduct. His lawful activism through Matrix Freedom and the Republic of Old Souls has led to unprecedented and legal retaliation, culminating in a 12-month sentence issued without jurisdiction or lawful process. Despite this, Ian now leads a landmark legal challenge in the International Criminal Court and the European Court of Human Rights. His mission is spiritual, peaceful, and liberating. The Disruptor documentary and global interview campaign reveal the truth the Crown doesn't want you to hear, which is the Vatican. The Crown's the Vatican. For over 20 years, Ian Clifford has been the target of relentless Crown-led persecution, from false narratives punished by figures like David Needle, Simon Goldberg, to a civil restraint order blocking legal redress. The system has tried to silence him. Why? Because Ian uncovered the truth about crown corruption and how to achieve financial sovereignty and lawful freedom. So, yeah, Ian, why don't you go ahead and start with what you were gonna. We're all woken up one way or another. Me, I got assaulted in various ways, and it makes you stand back and say, what the heck is going on here? And you have to do some research, and all of a sudden you find out the matrix is real. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I could talk all day about this, but I'll try and give you the shorter version. I'm in my 60th year, and I started off in financial services when I was 18. I had a professional football offer, a career in professional football. I had a car accident that stopped my career, which was my passion. I went into engineering briefly. I did mechanical engineering for a little bit of time, and realised that wasn't really what I wanted to do for the rest of my career. And I was introduced to financial services in 1982, I think it was. So that definitely shows my age. And I took to it like a duck to water, and lots of things started dropping into place. And I realised that I had a bit of a talent for solving people's problems with their finances. And at a very early age of about 22, I formed in the UK called a wealth management business. In US it's probably called something else, but in the UK it's called wealth management. And in order to practice as a wealth manager, you have to be licensed. You can't just go out there and start managing people's funds and all their financial affairs if you haven't got all the licenses. So in order to get the licenses, I had to get qualified, and I did about 5-6 years of study, and I got qualified under what's called the Chartered Insurance Institute. So it's something that a lot of people don't know about, but they think accountants have got chartered status, chartered accountants in the UK. Well, if you're doing financial planning and wealth management, there is the equivalent called the Chartered Insurance Institute, and I got all the qualifications that there were available. And I did something fairly unique. Is that at the very early age that I was in my early 20s, I reached out to accountants and lawyers and offered to do their financial planning for them, their own personal financial planning. I'm a 22, 23-year-old guy. And I said, look, this is my proposition. If you give me an hour of your time, what's it worth to you? What's your normal hourly rate? If you don't get any value out of what I've got to tell you in an hour, I'll pay you your hourly rate. So you've got nothing to lose, yeah? And that feedback's come back, Glenn. I don't know what's going on, but so that's how it started. And I had revealed. I believe that every one of us has got a talent. And I have a talent for solving problems. And in financial services, there are a lot of people have got a lot of problems, whether they're a business owner, whether they're a homeowner, whether they're both, whether they're just got a wage coming in, or whether they've got a very, very successful large organisation that they're managing. Everybody's got financial challenges, problems, things they don't understand. And I developed a model where I would basically write a report specifically for their situations. I'd ask them what they wanted, what they needed, and then I would write a report on the gaps, all the gaps in their financial plan. And then I would take them on as a client, and basically I would be their go-to man, their go-to guy for all of their finances. And I did that with chartered accountants, I did that with lawyers, and then they started referring me to their clients. And it took off. I built a very, very successful organisation. I had more clients than I could actually handle. So I had, there's only one of me, and there literally were thousands of clients. And I'm tracing it right down. I mean, this is over a number of years that this went on. And then something happened. In around about 1999, one of my team that was also practicing wealth management for my organisation was headhunted by a group called Saga, which at the time, and they probably still are, the largest retirement organisation in the UK. So I know you don't like the UK, but in Great Britain, still lots of feedback coming in for some reason. Hopefully it won't interfere too much with the recording. So basically what happened was this. One of my team, I had a big team, was headhunted by Saga. Saga still is, I think, the biggest group in Great Britain that caters for the retirement community, the over 55s. And they wanted to develop a way of extracting safe income from property. So picture the scene. You've got a couple normally over 55, maybe they're retirement age. They own a property and they want to generate an income from that property, but they don't want to lose the property. They want to leave that property to their heirs, and they don't want to have any risk. So, to cut a very long story short, I developed a model that would achieve that. Nobody had ever built this model before. I brought in a Prudential insurance company, which is at the time the world's biggest insurance company, to provide an insurance wrapper for this program. I brought in Saga, who were basically the client. They had all the 6 million people that wanted to do this. It was what would have been one of the biggest financial products ever launched in the UK history. And then I had to find a bank, because what I'd found was an arbitrage. So without getting too technical for the audience, a difference in rates between what you can access in the credit market, so you can take from a bank in terms of a credit line, what the cost of the credit line is, and what your assets can earn. And there was a certain asset class that I was specialising in. You put that into a portfolio and it generated an arbitrage between the two, a very, very safe arbitrage. And the model was tested by 2 firms of actuaries, by all the technical people at Prudential, all the technical people at Saga. And then I went to find a bank. And somebody introduced me to the Halifax Bank of Scotland. At the time, it was the Bank of Scotland. So this is now for the year 2000. And I met with them, and very quickly I was elevated up to the level of the board. So I'm now meeting with the board of Bank of Scotland in the year 2000, because they're really interested in this program. And they want to provide the credit line to back the program. And it's called the enrichment plan. And they did 1 year of due diligence on it with Prudential, with Saga, with 2 external firms of actuaries. And at the end of the year, everybody said, yeah, this is going to work. We want to get behind this. We want to launch it. And then one day I got a phone call from somebody senior at the Bank of Scotland who said to me, Ian, we've got some really bad news, but we've also got some really good news. And I said, okay, give me the bad news. He said, well, we can't at the moment back the enrichment plan because there's a lot of heat on our bank from the media, where they did some lending to elderly in the 1990s that had gone wrong, and the media was all over them, giving them a hard time in the national media. So they said, we need to park it for about a year. But here's the good news. We want to provide you and your organisation with an unlimited credit line that you can provide to high net worth individuals. As long as your organisation is bringing these assets in and your arbitrage is evident, you can have access to an unlimited credit line. And that was the beginning of a joint venture. It is unrivaled, and I've never heard anybody else ever having anything similar. And so basically my organisation, which was fully licensed to do all sorts of things in financial services, and I'm the CEO and the founder, and I've got a team of about 250 guys. It's not just me in a black bedroom somewhere. It's a large scalable organisation that I built up over the years. And it started off with me developing 12 programs that would solve people's financial planning problems, and using this arbitrage and opening up an account with the Bank of Scotland, who provided credit. And the customer would put in some of their equity, and we built an investment program, and there was this arbitrage, and it generated a positive cash flow every year. And it took off. And my organisation went from, pretty successful, medium size, to probably in 2007, probably the most successful financial services organisation of its kind in Great Britain. In fact, we won awards. We were banking with Bank of Scotland. We were also banking with the Royal Bank of Scotland, who were their arch rivals. And the Royal Bank presented me with an award in 2007 for the most profitable financial services business in the UK. And we were primarily banking with them at the time. So, this venture was very, very successful. I became extremely wealthy. There was, there's no stresses on me financially whatsoever. And then in 2007, towards the end of 2007, moving into 2008, I was invited to a meeting at Bank of Scotland, who'd become Halifax Bank of Scotland. And this is a moment that a lot of people I've heard talk about, where you're offered a deal from the dark side. Now, just one thing before that deal was offered to me, and I'll explain how it happened. I noticed on the Halifax Bank of Scotland balance sheet, because I understand what banks do, I understand how they operate, I even understand even more now. But back in those days, I'm in the matrix. From an in the matrix viewpoint, I was a pretty well-versed guy. I knew my way around financial services companies. I knew my way around how banks work. And I could see that the bank was massively overextended and was fooling the market, because they're a listed bank. So they're on the stock market. They're on the main market in the main FTSE 100. They're in that FTSE 100 list. They're one of the biggest banks in the UK. And I started looking at their finances and thinking, how are you doing this? Because it didn't make any sense to me. And I started talking internally about it. And I was given, don't worry about it. The guys in our finance area, the treasury area, they know what they're doing. Don't worry about it. But it didn't make a lot of sense to me. But I didn't go public with it because they're my joint venture partners, and I didn't want to cause them any problems. But I was very suspicious about how they were growing so quickly. Now, at the end of 2007, I was called to a meeting. And the meeting was an off-the-record meeting with somebody very senior at the Bank of Scotland that had become the Halifax Bank of Scotland, who basically told me that they were planning within the next year to seize the assets, my customers' assets, foreclose on the assets. Now, they asked me, are you with us, or the guy I was meeting with, are you with us, or yes or no? And I said, what do you mean, am I with you? My firm has got a joint venture with your bank. So of course I'm with you, but what do you mean, am I with you? And he said, well, let's put it this way. Within the next year, we're going to take the assets from the customers. And I said, how are you going to do that? Because there's contracts, there's the portfolios are in it, they're above water, there's no stresses on the portfolios, everything's working well. How are you going to do that? And he said, well, we're just going to downvalue the assets. And because we've got a charge over the assets, we can do that. And I said, well, I don't see how you can do that. The assets should be independently valued. They said, then well, no. We're going to value the assets. We've got the charge over them. And if they go underwater, we can call a ranger.
Aren't they unsecured liability to the bank or something like that, like a credit card?
Well, yeah. I mean, if I knew then what I knew today, I could have argued it very differently. But I'm in the matrix, and this is 2007. There's many years of knowledge have come under my. The river has flowed under my bridge a lot in knowledge since then. I'm in the matrix. Yeah. Remember, I'm trained. I know finances. I know accounting. I know how banks are supposed to work. I understand the Basel stuff. I understand ratios. I don't understand anything outside them. I'm in the matrix, basically.
Right. All your training is all you know.
All your training is what you know. What I knew. Yeah. I mean, I was professional. with a string of letters after my name. And I only knew what I'd learned from all the courses, from all the exams, like all the other professionals. I had no reason to doubt what I'd learned because it all made sense at the time. Now, of course, it's a whole load of nonsense, but we'll get onto that later on, maybe. But at the time, what they were telling me was that they held the legal charge over the assets, which was true, and they could value the assets because there was fine print in the lending contracts that enabled them to value the assets with any model that they wanted. And they were going to invoke that. And they were asking me, am I going to object to that and stand in their way? Or am I going to be with them and do it with them? And I said to them, why do you need to do this? Why do you want to do this? You're going to destroy my organization. And they said, because we need to shore up our balance sheet, and this is what we've planned to do. This is all off the record. This isn't a public meeting. There's no memos. There's nothing written down. And I said, well, you're going to destroy. I mean, we're talking about, at the time, there was 1 billion of future value of assets in these portfolios. So this wasn't insignificant. And I said to them, look, as far as I'm concerned, the asset values are what they are. And if you downvalue them, I'm going to fight you on this. Because if you say that they're worth a lot less than they're really worth, then I'm going to fight you and I'm going to show you that they're worth what they're worth. And they said, it doesn't matter what you say they're worth. It's what we say what they're worth that counts. And that's basically what happened. This is a very long story that I'm cutting very, very short, right? So in the next year...
It's legalized theft.
Basically, it was... they're running a racketeering model. We all know that now. I mean, I didn't know that then. Banks are racketeers. They're the biggest racketeers on the planet. And they were just telling me to my face, we are going to seize the assets. Are you going to join with us or are you going to oppose us? Right. And if you join with us, we're going to look after you. But if you oppose us, we're basically going to destroy you. And that is what happened. Now, in 2008, coincidentally not, the financial crisis is engineered in the 2008 financial crisis, which was completely engineered by all the top bankers. We all know that now. Back then, very few people knew it. I know it. And I knew that in 2007, they were already planning to do this. And this is one of the biggest banks in Great Britain. So
I got YouTube videos about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have YouTube videos about that.
I'm sure. I mean, it's, now looking back, it's obvious, but at the time, it wasn't obvious at the time. And, I'm in the matrix. I'm not doubting what I'm hearing. I'm thinking that I'm dealing with honorable people here, because my experience, all the years that I practiced in the wealth management, fund management markets, all I'd ever encountered is people that appeared to be quite honorable, appeared to operate with integrity. And suddenly I'm faced with this, in your face, we're going to steal the assets. And it's like, wow, really? And it took me a while to compute it and to process that. And I fought them for over a year. It was a bitter fight. And then you wind the clock forward a bit more, and then it starts to really heat up. So, now the regulators got involved, because the financial regulator that at the time was called the Financial Services Authority, most people would believe, and I'm here to say otherwise, that the financial regulators are there to protect the consumer, because that's what they want you to believe.
Yeah.
Now, back in the matrix, that's what they appear to be doing. But I'm here to tell you that their role is to protect the system, not the consumer.
Right.
But back in those days, back in 2008, when I'm battling in the bank, I'm thinking the regulators they're the good guys, aren't they? Because that's what they want you to believe, and they appear to be the good guys, right? And I didn't know that the bank was controlling the regulator, because it's unlike what most people believe, that the regulators control the banks and all the financial services companies. No, it's the other way around. So it's all inverted. And I'm living proof of it. And I've given sworn witness testimony to this in lots of witnesses and lots of court cases. So, you know, I'm a living proof that these guys who call themselves regulators are there to protect the system, and that's just the truth. And I'll swear an oath, and I have done, that that is the case, and I can give lots and lots of examples of that. So to cut, again, lots of very long stories short, my firm, who's got licenses with the financial regulator, you cannot operate in the matrix without these licenses, right? No other firm will work with you. It's not like, oh, well, never mind, don't worry about it. It's like nobody in financial services will work with you unless you've got the licenses.
Right.
So this is like the mafia. So unless you're part of the mafia, you're not going to be accepted. You can't carry on playing with the mafia.
Right.
Once you're in kind of thing, yeah? So you don't leave the mafia. It's like the Hotel California. Once you're in, you're in. That's basically it, right? Now, I didn't know that either back in those days. So what happens then is suddenly I'm invited to a meeting at the financial regulators in their headquarters in a place called Canary Wharf, which is right in the heart of London, which is the up-and-coming financial centre. It's out of the city, but it's the next biggest financial services area in London, right? And that's where the regulators have got their great big corporate headquarters, right? And I'm invited to a meeting there. And I took my finance director with me. And we're sitting in this meeting room, and there's three guys from the regulator on the other side of the table, and they push across the table my firm's accounts. And we had a holdings company and a trading company, and the trading company had the license with them, but lots of licenses, and the holdings company was unlicensed because it didn't need to be licensed. And the trading company had made a loan to the holdings company, so that on the trading company's balance sheet was a loan which was an asset on the trading company's balance sheet. This is an audited firm. It's not a regular firm. You don't get financial services license and manage people's money and do custody and all of these types of things unless you've got a balance sheet that is solvent. You can't operate this kind of company with a shoestring. You've got to have a budget. Yeah? You've got to have a balance sheet, positive balance sheet. And if you took this loan off the balance sheet, then the company was technically insolvent because it was a very substantial loan. So the meeting started off like this. The three guys from the regulator pushed the accounts over the table and said, we think your firm's insolvent here. Because we think it's insolvent, you're trading illegally, and actually it's a crime under Great Britain law, right? And we want you to make the company solvent within 24 hours. Otherwise, we're going to have to take away all your licenses.
Wow.
And I sat back and I said, well, on what basis do you think my firm is insolvent? Bearing in mind we've just won awards for being the most profitable financial services company of our day, only a few months before, right? We had a very solvent company. I had a very solvent company. And the guy in the middle said, he leaned forward and he looked at me and he said, this loan that you say is on the balance sheet of the trading company, it doesn't exist. And I said, of course it exists. It's been audited by our auditors for 3 years. It's been on that balance sheet for 3 years. And it's been in every regulatory return for the last 3 years. Every quarter, you've got to do regulatory returns. And you've accepted those returns. And you've never pushed back and said that there's something wrong with the returns. And he leant forward a bit more and he said, if I say that loan on the balance sheet doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. So your company's insolvent. Now, this is the mafia now talking to you, right?
Right, exactly.
Now you're facing the mafia, right? And these guys have got, they're in their castle. It's their game, and they're operating like the mafia. And that's the first time I sat back and thought, wow, this guy has just told me that something that they have had the audits for 3 years doesn't exist. So they're going to make the rules up as they go along, right? Yeah. And this was the beginning. Exactly. And then what happens after that was he gives me 24 hours to make the company solvent. So I go back to our offices, my finance director and I, we talk all the way back, we drive back, and we're talking all the way back about this is ridiculous. How can they say the company's insolvent? It's very solvent. We get hold of our auditors. Now, this is one of the top 6 auditing firms in the UK called Grant Thornton in Great Britain. Yeah. And we say to them, well, the FCA says we're insolvent. What do you say? You've done the audit. Oh, no, that's ridiculous. We can show them that the firm is very solvent. Right? Now, then what happens is there is a board meeting because the FSA then wrote to every one of the wealth management firms that have been introducing their customers, their clients to my firm for these portfolios that I was providing to the marketplace. And they wrote to all the intermediaries. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of intermediary firms, what you would call broker dealers, they're introducers, yeah, licensed introducers. And they basically wrote a letter that said that the portfolios may have been missold because they may have been misled by my firm. Not that they were misled, they may have been misled.
Right.
Now you put the cat right in the middle of you put the fox in the middle of the chicken coop, haven't you? You know, all the chickens are screaming and flying up in the air. What's going on?
That's
maybe
right.
Ian's been this, right? Yeah, you've got cats and pigeons and chickens and foxes and everything going off. Every other analogy that you can imagine, right? So and this is back. This is back in the day when people used to use the phone, right? So my phone lines have gone red hot with all these intermediary firms, hundreds and hundreds of them all over the UK had received this letter. Oh my God, the regulator says that we may have missold these programs to our investors and, what's going on? This is before the bank seized them, right? So they set it up that way. So I had to have a board meeting because my auditors and my corporate lawyers are telling me, Ian, this is very serious. Maybe the regulator is going to make your firm responsible for all of this problem. And if that's the case, you can't carry on, basically. So we had a board meeting. And I had 2 corporate lawyers, Magic Circle firms in Great Britain, big auditing firm, me, my directors, all around my boardroom table. And everybody's telling me, Ian, you've got to liquidate the firm. You can't carry on. They're going to arrest you for trading illegally because your firm's, according to the regulators, insolvent. And basically, you've now got these liabilities. And at the moment, it looks like there's £400 million worth of liabilities that the regulator is going to put on your firm. And none of these liabilities existed. It was all invented, right? But don't worry, because we've got a plan for you, right? And one of the lawyers I knew really, really well, I thought he was a mate of mine because I've been socialising with him for many years before then. He took me to one side and he said, don't worry, Ian, we've got a plan. I'll introduce you to my very good friend who is a liquidator who will look after you. He knows what's going on. His name is Peter Middleton. He was one of the biggest, he came from one of the biggest firms of liquidators in the United Kingdom, Great Britain, because it is a corporation, we all know that. And basically I was introduced to Peter Middleton, who at the time was the chairman of Salisbury Football Club. He owned many, many businesses in Salisbury, which is a very affluent part of the south coast of England. He was very well known. He was a bit of a celebrity in his own area. And I had a meeting with him and he said, Ian, I know exactly what's going on here. You've been made the scapegoat. So what we'll do is we'll ring fence all the assets. My firm had lots of assets and we'll fend off the regulators. We'll fend off all the alleged creditors because there was hardly any creditors. In fact, there was only like stationary firms and people that hadn't had their invoice paid because we were midway through a month. And at the end of the year, I'll give you your firm back and all the assets. And I stupidly did the deal because I didn't know that it was all rigged in the background. But then what happened was I'm away on a holiday with my wife and I get a call from Peter Middleton. He called me and he said, Ian, I've got to tell you something. I've just done a deal with the regulator. And I said, what deal, Peter? He said, well, they were going to fine the firm in liquidation. And bearing in mind, he's now in charge. You know how liquidators work? They take over the directorship. So I'm no longer a director, according to the way that the company law works. Now the liquidator, he's the director of the firm. He can make decisions as the principal director of the firm. Right? He said I had to make a decision because the regulator was going to fine the company. And in order to avoid that fine, I've accepted everything that they've speculated about your firm to be true. And I said, you did what, Peter? What have you accepted to be true? He said, well, they've got all these speculations about what your firm, how your firm breached the regulatory principles and was to blame for the fact that people have lost their investment to avoid the fine. I said, Peter, there never was a fine because my firm isn't responsible for any of the losses. The bank seized the assets. The bank is responsible for that. My firm isn't responsible for that. And he said, well, it's done now. And that led to what's called a public censure of my firm. Now, that's one of the most serious things you can ever have to happen in a financial services company. If you've been publicly censured, your firm has, you're not coming back from that. That's like your coffins have got nails all around the top. You're not getting that lid off again. You're done. And then what happened was the media jumps on the bandwagon because they're told to, because they're led down that path. Suddenly I've suddenly become labelled the fraudster from Portsmouth. That was my label. Right? That's where I was operating from, a place called Portsmouth. So suddenly I'm the guy who's caused 400 million of people's funds to be lost. And I'm the guy who's been misleading everybody for years. And I've gone from being an award-winning, financial services, wealth manager, fund manager, to being a villain who's lost his firm. And even your closest friends don't want to talk to you anymore because you're all over the media. There's 2 TV programs made about it. You're on the national radio station. You're all over the internet. You're in the national newspapers on the front page.
Can't fight against that. That's for sure.
So that's how it starts. That's 2010. It took a few years for it to get to that level. 2010, and then I try very hard to set the record straight. I appeal, I complain, I go to members of parliament, and I got 2 members of parliament who like, wow, this is amazing, Ian. We're going to help you because this is a travesty of justice, and surely it can't be like this, right? And then within the next few weeks, they won't take your phone calls anymore because they've been warned off. Right. Because in my evidence, I'm now revealing that it's not just $1 billion of assets that's been seized. No, it's 90 billion. Because across the top 6 banks in 2008, 7, 8, 9, they seized 90 billion of customer assets. And it's never been investigated. It's the biggest financial scandal in the history of Great Britain that's never been investigated. And it won't be investigated because those at the top of the pyramid don't want it exposed. And this is the reason why the cause of all of the persecution that I've experienced in the last 15 years. It started in 2005 when I blew the whistle internally, and then I'm offered the deal. But really starts to heat up from 2009-10, and then the next 10 years I start 7 other ventures. I can't get a license. They won't give me a license. They won't turn me down. 7 applications for licenses will run out of time. Frustrated, never completed, never rejected. Just run out of time. I go and create ventures with 7 financial services ventures I created because that's what I knew. And I got some really big ventures off the ground, and every single one of them was destroyed by mafia tactics from the regulator. You then get to 2017, And they're speculating that one of the things that I was doing, because I built some algorithmic trading systems, because that's one of the things that I used to do a lot of. And I was licensing the algorithmic systems to fund managers, one in particular with my close joint venture partner. And the regulator came in, which is now called the Financial Conduct Authority, and they said to my joint venture partner, Stargate Capital Management, it looks like Ian's managing these funds and he hasn't got a license. So you're aiding and abetting crime, and we're going to we're going to destroy your firm. Now, this was a really big joint venture. It took years to build it. I'm providing the administration and the algorithmic trading software. These are not regulated activities. It's the nearest I could get to fund management without actually managing the funds. And it was very successful. And basically, very long story cut short, they destroyed Stargate. They threatened the owner of Stargate. And I managed to beat them in the High Court. And it made legal precedent. So 2017, UK Innovative TI, which was my firm, versus the Financial Conduct Authority, made legal history because I beat them because they were alleging that I was managing funds without a license. I found a way to get into the court because I wasn't a regulated individual or firm, and it was a regulated court. It's called the Upper Tribunal in the High Court in the UK, in Great Britain. And basically, I beat them, and they never forgave me for that. I found a loophole and a chink in their armor, and I exploited it, and I beat them. And I stood in the courtroom on my own with no lawyers or barristers or anything else, and they were lawyered up to the hilt with barristers, and I beat them. Basically, because everything they were saying was untrue, as everything they say full stop is untrue, pretty much. And I proved that and what they'd actually done, Glenn, was this. They had published another notice, a public notice, naming me 75 times in the notice. He may be managing funds without a license.
Yeah,
Not
right.
he is.
Maybe.
True.
Right.
He may be. Right? Now then, the next day, they publish another notice and they backdate it to the previous day and they get rid of the first notice. So the second notice is backdated without my name in it. The first notice has got my name in it 75 times, and would you believe it? All the media picks up on that.
Right. Of course.
Suddenly you've got all these stories all over the media. Ian, the fraudster from Portsmouth, may be managing funds without a license in breach of what's called the general prohibition. You don't come back from that. You go to jail for that stuff. And now all the joint venture partners that they knew that they were working with me in the background because they know my pedigree, they know what I'm good at. They all run for the hills. Every one of them resigns on the day. And that also destroys all the joint ventures. That happened a few times. It happened multiple times. And then you get into 2019 and I decide, because I've now almost fully woken up to what's going on out there. And I decide that because I know how banks really work, and because Professor Richard Werner, with his research and his papers on what he calls credit creation, because I knew how the banks really worked and that they don't lend money and they don't take deposits. They just purchase securities from their customers who are corporate, because it's the registered corporation that is a banker. And because I started to know all these things, I decided that what I would do is help people to void their mortgages because of what I knew. And I started something called Mortgage Free in 2019. And that is the beginning. And it's like a journey along the next 6 years that leads us up to what we're doing today, Matrix Freedom Republic of Old Souls. And there's been a lot of learning in that 6-year period, that the system is more rigged than you could ever believe. And if you want in the system, you could never accept it to be as rigged as it really is. On every single level. Layers and layers and layers of darkness that is made to look like it's got integrity, but none of it has. And and then what happened in 2023 is I wake up early in the morning and I'm lying in bed listening to a video. Actually, I was listening to some video about something, and there's a knock on my door, and I'm living in a remote part of the south of England, very remote. Nobody comes to visit. I'm living on my own. My marriage is gone. Most of my friends don't want to talk to me. It's one of those stories where everybody used to want to know you, and you could fill a party up with 250 guests within 2 days, and then suddenly no one wants to know you anymore because you're now the fraudster. You're the guy who used to be really successful who's now lost it all. You must be an idiot. Yeah, you must be fucked up idiot, because nobody goes from being up here to down there unless they're completely incompetent. Yeah, or worse than that, you must be a fraudster and you've been revealed. Yeah. So that's what a lot of the circle that I used to know started to believe that. I mean, the media is quite persuasive because they lay it on really thick about me being a fraudster and all this kind of stuff. So you find out who your friends really are. Let's put it that way. Anyway, so there's a knock on the door, and I go down in my dressing gown because it's very early in the morning, and there's 13 police at my door, and I'm thinking, wow. Maybe there's a bomb or something, and maybe they've come to help me to get out, and maybe there's some major event going on. And then I open the door and I instantly realise, no, they're going to arrest me. And they actually brought, and believe it or not, they brought a lawyer with them. Have you ever heard that before? The police brought a lawyer with them so that I could be represented on the doorstep by a lawyer.
Wow.
So they wanted to entrap me with getting me to agree to being represented. Yeah, obviously your audience will know that you never want to be represented by a lawyer, because then you're going to be treated as an infant, as a ward of the crown, a ward of the court, and all that kind of stuff. And they brought the lawyer, and she's standing there on my doorstep saying, "I'm here to represent you. Would you sign this bit of paper and you can appoint me as your lawyer?" I said, I'm not appointing you for any purpose whatsoever. I don't need a lawyer. I said, I've done all my own work for years. I don't need any lawyers. Thank you very much. But you can, I just don't need you. You can go if you want. So she turned around and went, right? Which I think she was quite surprised. And then, they read out the warrant, and I'm thinking the warrant's going to be defective. I'm going to challenge the warrant. So I look at it, and it's all been done meticulously. It's all been signed properly, stamped properly. There's nothing wrong with it. I know what a warrant should look like, and it looked really kosher. It looked really pucker, right? So I made a decision. Should I obstruct this, or should I just go with it and see where it ends up? If I'm going to obstruct this, there's 13 police that are going to strong arm me into their van. So I decided just to go with it. See where it went. So I did. You get handcuffed, you get taken to the investigation centre, which I've never been in that environment ever in my life. And suddenly, there's all the fingerprints, there's the picture, there's the turn sideways, there's all that stuff you see on the movies. It's all going on. You got stripped. They search you. It's completely what you see in the movies, yeah? It's very degrading. It's deliberately done. Yeah. And then I'm then handed a bit of paper that says that there's some guys from the financial regulator who are going to interview you, and they're going to be interviewing you on the speculation that your firm may be providing financial services without a license.
Speculation. Now, when you unpack it, right, Matrix Freedom is a private members unincorporated association. So it can't offer financial services because it isn't it's not incorporated. It doesn't even have a bank account, right? So it would be impossible for it to provide financial services. And secondly, all the members that come in waive statutory protection because they're members of a private members association, which is the whole reason why I set it up that way. You don't get statutory protection when you come into the private members association. You waive it all. You don't want it. You're
you're a man or a woman, you're living, you don't want statutory legislation. You don't need it, you don't want it, you waive it. So I thought, well, this will be interesting. What are these guys going to ask me about providing financial services without a license? Now, sadly, I still know more about the regulatory rule books than most people that work in the regulators, sadly, because I did it for 35 years. I could go on quiz programs and answer questions on this stuff. I know my way around the regulatory. The rule books in the UK, like the SEC, they're this thick, full of principles of regulation, right? Sadly, I know that stuff because I had to know it as the CEO and founder of one of the biggest financial services firms in the UK. And I didn't trust my compliance people because I wanted to know what we were doing was okay. I didn't trust other people necessarily with that because it's quite an important thing that you need to understand, right? So I do know this stuff, right? And I'm expecting to walk in a room and they're going to lay out all these examples of where this firm that doesn't exist is providing financial services without a license. And after 13 hours of being interrogated by them, two guys, on tape, on video, on recordings, stop-start, video recordings, blah, 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 not one question about what my firm was allegedly doing, i.e. allegedly providing financial services, which is called claims management. It's a regulated activity. Debt counselling, regulated activity. Or issuing what's called financial promotions. And that's marketing material that needs to be signed off by somebody with a license. Now, Matrix Freedom doesn't do any of those things. And nor do any of the member firms of Matrix Freedom. So I'm waiting for them to start asking questions about these things. And then after a while, I said, look, guys, you know, when are you going to ask me questions about claims management, debt counselling, or issuing financial promotions? When are you going to show me some examples of what you think Matrix Freedom, that isn't even a firm in your sense, is allegedly you're speculating it's doing? When are you going to show me some examples of that? And their response to me was, you don't ask us the questions, we ask you the questions. So it's going like back in the room in Canary Wharf where it's like, if I tell you that loan's not on the balance sheet, it's not there, right? It's one of those moments. It's another one of those moments. And I thought, okay, fine, this is rigged. I know what you're going to do. Now, are you aware of Martin Armstrong? He's known as the forecaster.
Yes, yes.
Now,
brilliant guy.
What did they do to Marty, right? They accused Marty of money laundering. Maybe your firm's involved in money laundering, and therefore we're going to investigate your firm, and we want your software, your Socrates software that predicts market movements.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you don't give it to us, you're in contempt of a court order, and we're going to throw you in jail. And he ended up there for more than 10 years. Yeah. So I knew that that's what they were planning to do. They're going to speculate that I'm doing financial services without a license when they've got no evidence, so they don't need any and don't want any, because they're going to try and entrap me. And that's exactly what they've done. And I predicted it in June of 23. 2 years later, after serving literally 50 to 100 notices, affidavits, 500 witness statements from our members to say they've never been offered any regulated financial services. Everything you can imagine is rigged and railroaded to the July 30th when they hand down a sentence, 12-month custodial sentence, completely ignoring all the evidence that my firm and I have never provided what they say and have never breached any order. And I'm a living man. And actually, and this is what, and this is the benefit of all this, right? So along the journey, I have had to study probably, arguably more than anybody I know, definitely more than anybody I know, about how the legal and the law works, right? Now, a lot of people talk about that and they get some of it right and they get a lot of it wrong. Now, I'm here to tell you that from first-hand experience, you can't go into any courtroom anywhere in the world, in my opinion, and say, I'm a living man, I don't recognise your jurisdiction. I'm not that corporate fiction, and or I'm the general executor of the decedent estate, and the judge is going to go, you know what? I agree with you. There you go. You don't have to be here anymore. See you later. The case is now struck out. I don't believe, from first-hand knowledge, that no matter what people do, if they're presenting a case as a living man or woman, thinking that they're under God and that is superior to the legal system, I'm living proof that they do not care about that stuff. Now, you've got to remember that they have the armies, the guns, the surveillance, they've got everything at their fingertips. So if you think you're going to stand there and say, I don't consent to your legal system, your acts and statutes, and I'm going to invoke my right as a living man, they will just ignore that if they want to. It's what they've done in my case. But there's one thing that they can't ignore. And that is that in February of this year, I created the Republic of Old Souls as a church ministry under 508c1a, protected under Article 1 of the Constitution, also protected under the Montevideo Convention because it is a self-declared nation. You add those two together, you've now got diplomatic immunity and an envoy for a church. And I did a webinar last Saturday, Glenn, and I asked my membership, we get lots of people coming on the webinars. I asked the audience, can somebody give me an example of where the government has taken on the church and won? Anywhere in the world. Nobody can give you an example because it's never happened. And you see, for people who want freedom from the matrix, you have to be on a church mission. You have to be part of a church. Now, the Church of Scientology, I don't agree with what they talk about, but I agree with their structure. The Amish, I agree with their structure. They're churches. The Church of Scientology has beaten the IRS multiple times in the last 20 years. All manner of attacks. I've done deep study into it. The Amish don't have to register their children into the corporate birth certificate registration system. They don't even have to go in a courtroom. Why? Because they're all envoys of a church. So if for those who want to get free of the matrix, in the law and the legal stuff, forget UCC1 filings over the corporate, the Ens Legis Corporation and thinking that's going to do it for you. Forget serving affidavits and notices on all in sundry saying I'm a living man or a living woman and I have superior jurisdiction under God. It doesn't work. But operating as a church envoy with diplomatic immunity, and by the way, if you are on a mission, an ecclesiastical mission, which is peace, which is basically operating as a creditor and operating as a beneficiary to the Ens Legis as its general executor, that is your belief system. That's the belief of the Republic of Old Souls. That is the religion, if you want to use that word. Is to cause no harm, cause no loss, operate as the creditor and operate as the beneficiary, and then advocate that as a church envoy. Now you're on a spiritual mission. And guess what? That qualifies you for a diplomatic passport from the United States. So not only can you can go above all of the bullshit that's going on in the circuit courts, we call them the crown courts, it's like circuit courts in the United States. All that bullshit that's going on, you can rise all above it because they don't fuck with the church. And you get through international law. You're protected by a whole raft of international law. That is remedy. And I've only learned all that because of the battle I've been under. And if you look at all my filings, if you go to ianclifford.com, and you see all my filings to the European Court for Human Rights, to the Hague, which is the International Criminal Court, you can now make the individuals who are persecuting you personally liable for crimes against humanity in the international court because you're a church envoy. You can't do that as a citizen. You can't do that as a man under God. You can as a church envoy. So that's something really positive that's come out of this. And then if you want to, if you want to become financially abundant, then you recoup your credit. And that's one of the principal things we do for our membership is, and unbeknown to the vast majority, the credit, if I do webinars and I ask a question, how much is world debt at the moment? And people got all these guesses, oh, it's this, it's that, it's the other. I say, well, no one really knows. But the IMF say it's about $380 trillion. That's what they say. But nobody really knows because there's so many derivatives out there. No one's got a frigging idea what all those are worth. And I asked the next question, who is that world debt owed to? Is it owed to China? Is it owed to Russia? Is it owed to, who's it owed to? Is it owed to George Soros?
We the people.
Is it owed to Klaus Schwab? Is it owed to Bill Gates? Who's it owed to? And you get all these answers. Oh, it's owed to the governments. It's owed to the central banks. It's owed to whoever. And they're all wrong. Because it's all owed back to the creditors. And who are they? The living men and the women, because they're harvesting our energy through the corporate system. I call it the monopoly board. We're all on the monopoly board. And we've got this piece that goes round and round the board, which is the corporate person, the registered corporate person, that goes round and round the board. And we all think that corporate piece is us. Of course, it isn't. It's just made to look like us. And we start to represent it as if it is us. And that's a fraud, right? Because you go around saying that you are the piece on the monopoly board, you're committing fraud. You're committing an impersonation fraud. Because that piece on the board is registered to the Crown, Vatican. It's their piece. It's their corporation. And then you get these people that say, oh, well, I'm all right because I've got a house and I've got a car and I've got a business and I've got some money in the bank and I've got my 401k and I've got my pension and, in a few years I'm sitting back on, I'm retiring, yeah? Well, I'm here to tell you, no, you've got nothing at all. Because all of that illusion is under the body corporate, which is registered ultimately to the Vatican. You as the man and woman own zero. You have absolutely nothing. And when people talk about, Klaus Schwab is talking about, you'll own nothing and be happy, we're already there. We are already there right now. So these people think, oh, the next system is going to come in and it's going to enslave us all and we're going to lose all of our
It's already here.
It's already here. Just 1 second. There's a guy who's just starting to blow leaves in my backyard.
Yeah, the matrix is already here. That's why I like Ian, because he's got some real alternatives. There's a lot of people out there peddling unproven theories, and he's able to prove everything he does. And so that's why I like this matrix freedom.
Sorry, there's a guy who's come to do the garden, and he didn't realize he's got a leaf blower. And he happened to, wouldn't it be just the time to put your leaf blower on right in the middle of an interview? So
there you go.
So going back to the illusion, you see, I think there's billions out there who actually genuinely believe that they have got some control of their commercial life. They drive around in a car that they think is theirs. It's actually registered to the state. They pull up outside a house and walk in. They think that house belongs to them. They look in their bank statement and they think the credit in that bank statement belongs to them. They get their pension account out of their drawer. Oh, I've got $1 million in my pension. I'm okay. And I'm here to tell you that you've got absolutely zero today. So how do you turn that around? Well, the way you turn it around is that you operate as the creditor And all of that abandoned credit that you've put out there, mortgages, let's just say mortgages as a really big example. How many mortgages have the average guy in his 50s, 40s, 50s had in their life? You know, most people have had 2, 3, 5, some people have had 20 mortgages across their lives, you know, across their commercial life. Add the face value up. What's that worth? Because all of that is abandoned credit. And what you did is you signed a mortgage contract and you transferred your energy to the bank, and the bank took it on as the nominee. And they never reported it as federal income, because it is federal income. And they never reported it because all the banks have been given an exemption not to report if they don't want to. If they don't want to, because what they're going to do with that security that you've signed, you've deposited with the bank, is they're going to trade it on. They're going to put it into CDOs, or, you know, the collateralized debt obligations, or mortgage-backed securities, or call it any name you like. It's just basically a game of Jenga from the, you know, from the Big Short. It's all these bonds that are being traded. It's all bullshit, because the owner of the credit, the holder of the credit, is the living man, woman. But they don't know it. And through the public banker, which is the body corporate, which is under the Bills of Exchange Act, is a banker, can issue bills of exchange. So all those bills of exchange, which are the face value mortgages, are all sitting out there as abandoned credit. Now, the banks don't report it because they've been given an exemption. But if you report that credit as abandoned, and and there are unpaid taxes on it, because the nominees, which are all the banks, are holding that credit as if it was their asset on their balance sheet. It's RICO fraud. So all you've got to do, if you want to void your mortgage and discharge it, is to send a notice, not just to the mortgage provider, whoever they are, because they're not really providing it, but they call themselves a mortgage provider. You send it to the indentured trustee, who sits way above them. They're the guys managing all these debt obligations and securities. And then you send it, if you're in the United States, you send it to the Treasury. Because all debts under HJR 192 are debts of the United States. And all you've got to do is send them the mortgage contract, and with a bill of exchange, because the banker, the corporate person, is going to send them a bill of exchange with the existing debt contract, and they have to discharge it. And if they don't, they're breaking the law. And then what you do is you then recoup the abandoned credit, which is your right, because you're the holder of the credit. And you do that through an international trust. You get the credit back for the mortgage. You voided it because there's a whole load of fraud going on. You're never ever going into a courtroom, by the way. I mean, the only case that ever fell down in the favour of a borrower was the Credit River case. And what happened to the judge and what happened to the guy who was the claimant is they both disappeared.
They turned up dead.
Exactly. So you're never going to win in a courtroom with this. So you go in there and you go into the mortgage provider with a notice, you go to the indentured trustee, you go to the Treasury. You remind them all that it's RICO fraud. If it is, you can prove it on every single level. If the indentured trustee doesn't play ball, you would take a lien out over them, registered in the United States under the UCC code, which is a big problem for those guys. I know what they're like. I used to be a trustee. You do not want a UCC1 filing against your corporate person, because that's going to put you out of business. You can't operate as a indentured trustee if you've got debts which are greater than your assets, because you're basically insolvent as a person. So that's a big problem for the indentured trustee. You're sending a bill of exchange to the Treasury. In the notices, it quotes all of their legislation where they're saying that this is possible, that this is the way it should be done. And then you recoup the security via the tax filing process, because it is basically, it's abandoned credit, which is unclaimed and unreported federal income, which is why it's a tax return. You get the credit back. So even if they ignore the void mortgage notice and they fuck around with the discharge, you get the credit back. So you can't lose. And people say, oh, it all sounds very interesting, Ian, but have you done anything? Yes, it works. So 6 years after I set Mortgage Free up and tried various things and learned along the way, we've now got a model that works. Not just in the United States, in every country, because it's all the same, because it's all one big centralized system. And then you can recoup your bank payments, because they're not payments, you see, they're just securities that the body corporate banker, the name on the birth certificate, the name on the passport, that's not you, as we know, it's the name of the body corporate. That body corporate is a banker. You see that when they created this system, they had to have a commerce system, and they had to leave the men and the women off the monopoly board, and they had to put a piece on the board and then convince everybody on the board that they are the player on the board. But they're not. And you can put as many players on that board as you want, by the way. So you can create multiple sole proprietorships. And by the way, a sole proprietorship is a US citizen. If you look at the code, it's a 14th Amendment citizen. So you can create multiple sole proprietorships and put them on the monopoly board if you want to. You can have multiple international trusts and use those for commerce. And then what you can do is once you've recouped the credit, you can then hold real assets in trust. And that's what the super rich do. That's what your Bill Gates are doing. That's what your super rich are doing, right? They're holding their assets in trust. Real assets, not fiat currency, which has got no value, not cryptocurrency, physical gold, physical silver, land, art, physical things. Hold the fee simple title in an international trust. And then if you want to get out of the really big entrapment, which is the digital concentration camp, with Catherine Austin Fitts does a really good job at the Solari report talking all about the digital concentration camp, which is the real big threat to everyone. It's not the commerce, it's not the law and the legal, it's the transhumanism that's going on. So you're now talking about the hive mind and all the things that they're doing to put the nanobots into the atmosphere, into the water, into the food, and they're taking over people's thoughts. And AI, contrary to what Trump is spouting out and all this nonsense that he's talking about AI is the way forward and it's going to create jobs. No, it's going to enslave humanity. And that's the whole design behind it. And so if you want to get that out of your body, then you get a plasma machine. You get a Tesla plasma machine, which puts plasma energy into you, and it gets rid of the nanobot technology, and it rebuilds the cells. And that's part of the freedom plan of the Republic of Old Souls: health, water, food, energy. So free energy, water from the atmosphere. You can make energy from magnets. You don't need to be plugged into an energy grid. It's all a myth. It's another part of the control system. You can run a device in your house that will power your whole house with infinite energy from magnets. You can have a Tesla plasma machine which will cure just about any ailment. You never need to go to the doctor. You don't need pharma. You can run water from the atmosphere, which will clean the water as it's taking it from the atmosphere. You don't need a water supply for drinking. Yeah, you might want it for bathing, but you don't need it for drinking. You can do food direct from the farmers, because they're destroying farms everywhere, right? All part of the control agenda.
Right.
Bill Gates buying up farms everywhere. All over Europe, they're destroying the farmers because they want to get rid of them. Because they want you to buy shit from the supermarket that's going to have more and more nanobot technology in it.
They want you to eat bugs.
Want you to eat bugs. So why not become a member of Matrix Freedom and Republic of Old Souls and partner up with local farmers? And we've got abundant members who are recouping their credit, who can buy the produce direct from the farmer. He doesn't need the supermarket anymore. Why not do that? Isn't that a better idea? And so all these things, you've got communication. You can run internet without going through 5G, without going through satellites. You can do peer-to-peer internet. There's no need for any of this nonsense, all this surveillance stuff. I mean, we're being listened to now. We're being watched everywhere. You can operate all that independently. You don't need to use their systems. The internet is the worst enslavement model I've ever seen. And they sold it to us because it's going to transform your life, yeah? Do you remember, Glenn? Because I remember this back in the early 90s. This thing called the internet came out, and it's like, wow, we can use that to do research. We can connect with each other. We can do all these things. We're going to have more time. Yeah, we're going to have more time to do things that we like doing. Yeah. Now, how many people do you know have got more time because of the internet?
They're busy stuck on their phone.
Exactly.
They're busy looking at their phone all the time.
And then they've got the mobile. It's like, wow, look at all these things you can do on your mobile that's listening to you, that they can blow it up in your face and get you out, take you out of the game if they want to. And you've become completely
$1 billion. They spent $1 billion developing the microphones and phones so they can pick up anything in the room, anything in the house that you're in, even 100%. When the phone's off.
I think you can turn it off, but it's still on. Yeah, it's still listening.
Yeah.
So, and then they convince you that Siri is a good thing to have, and the Alexa is a good thing to have, because you can say, "Turn the music on," but you don't realise that that's just, just little baby steps. It's like as David Icke says, it's the tiptoe to tyranny. But they're just little steps of getting you used to all these things, and then you become reliant on them, and the next thing you know, you can't think because you've got no consciousness because they've taken it from you. And that's the end game for them, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep. And the chemtrails and all the rest of it.
Yes, I mean, for me, it's like, what can we do to try and survive and get through this? Is we come together as a community. We don't take all their services. We step out of their bullshit systems. We have true wealth, which we're holding in trust, and we get away from all the poison. And even if we are exposed to the poison, we're using the plasma, which is next level for cell regeneration and cleaning the body up. Way better than taking supplements or going on a healthy diet. This plasma, this is what Tesla was working on over 100 years ago. It's next level. I've been using a Tesla plasma machine for 3 months now. It's completely transformed my health. Other people have been cured from, just about, you name the ailment, and this thing, after a few weeks of using it, will cure it. It's unbelievable. It's next level. And the company that makes it, is doing it in such a way where you have to make a donation to the company, because they can't sell you the kit because it will be blocked and banned. Now, I'd love to make that. One of the things I'd love to do is to make that Tesla plasma kit and actually give it away to our members, because I think that health is one of the most important pillars, and we're all under attack at every moment of every day. And I know, because I've done a lot of research in how this stuff works, this is what they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know that plasma energy is the source of the energy of the universe. If you put it in your body, all the cells of your body regenerate. Your body's like a big battery. And as you get older, the battery just loses power. Your organs start giving up. You get diseases. And then people blame it on, it's because my dad had this or my mum had that. It's all bullshit. It's because the body's losing power. The circuits they're not firing well. You put that plasma into the body and it regenerates everything. It recharges it all. It's awesome.
Yeah, there's 4 states of matter: solid, liquid, gas, and plasma.
Exactly. So, most of the remedies are quite simple. But the problem, I think, is that a lot of the guys out there that have got these remedies find it difficult to find the customers for them. They can't market because they get shut down. Even if they do market, you know, then they've got a difficult thing is to find the customers that can afford their product. So if they come into Matrix Freedom, we have got a community all over the world now of affluent members that can finance their kit and do it privately within our organization. You don't have to go outside and start advertising it. You just do it internally. So we're building our own community in our own marketplace for these types of things. And because of the credit recoupment model, because there's no money, it's just credit, as JP Morgan said all those years ago. If you've cracked how to recoup the credit, which we have, why do you need to charge people for things? You only might want to do that as a filter on the way in to make sure that they're serious and they're not going to waste your time. But once they're in the organization and you've got that credit recoupment model going on, why do you need to charge? Why do you need to sell solutions for profit? You don't. You really don't. And that's what I'm building is that model. And this is why the Crown have been, got a sentence which they can't invoke, by the way, because I'm in North Cyprus. I'm in constructive exile. They can't come here. I've now gone on the attack. I've now taken them on for all of their deception and their railroading and their fraud. Even as far as, you read my case to see how hilarious it is. The prosecutor for the Financial Conduct Authority doesn't exist. They've invented a prosecutor. No, it's just a fiction. It's not even a registered person. It just does. The guy's name is Alistair Mackenzie. Does not exist. They've just invented a name and using that as the prosecutor. That's how fraudulent they are. And I've told them all, and I've put them all on notice to prove to me that this guy, because if you're prosecuting for the Crown, you've been given a position in the Crown to prosecute, surely you've got to be real. You can't be just made up like a cartoon character. That's what they've done. So not only is there so go through it, right? They've got no evidence of any financial services ever being offered to anybody, which is the reason why they allegedly investigating. And 500 witnesses have said that there is no financial services being offered, so there's no need to investigate because we are representative of the membership, right? Then you've got a fake prosecutor who doesn't even exist. You've then got a court which calls itself a court, but I've asked for proof of what's called the Crown agent, because every court, and it's similar in the US, by the way, all these circuit courts are supposed to have an agent that's supposed to oversee them. This particular court in the system in this called Southwark Crown Court, it's the Crown Court. It's got the big crest on it. It looks very official, but they don't have a Crown agent. And in 1995, they passed legislation that said that every court in the UK must have a Crown agent to oversee that there's fair dealing and justice being administered. But they haven't got one. And I've asked from the beginning, who's the Crown? Yeah. So it isn't a court.
It's a fake court.
Yeah. And then I've said to the judge, who calls himself a judge, where's your oath of office? Because I want to see it. You're supposed to have sworn an oath to the king. Because they got two oaths. They got one to the bar and they got one to the king. Well, I'm a man under God, and I want you to give me a court of record, and I want you to show me your oath. And I've put you on notice. And I've repeatedly asked for you. I require you to give me your oath. Never gives it. I don't even know that the guy is a judge. He's definitely not my judge. But is he a judge at all? Because he's never shown his oath, and he's not actually sitting in a courtroom because there's no Crown agent. So they've got no case, no prosecutor, no court, and no judge, and yet they still hand out a sentence, which they want to put on Interpol. But Interpol doesn't operate in North Cyprus, which is why I'm here. There is no Interpol cooperation. And they didn't realise, because they ignore my notices, that I've set up a church. Because they've ignored that notice. But I've got a contractual, 3 notices. I've formed a church. This is what it is. This is what it's called. This is how it operates. And I'm an envoy for the church. And therefore, I've got all these immunities and I'm a diplomat. And they just choose to ignore all of that and railroad their way through it. But because they never rebutted any of those notices, it's law. So now I can take all of that into the European Court, which ordinarily you couldn't do. Because you can't just go to the European Court for Human Rights. Because they're going to come back and say, well, you've got to exhaust all the options in the Crown system in Great Britain before you can come in. But they also, and I forgot to mention this bit, in 2024, there's a media publication called Open Democracy, who, by the way, are working for the World Economic Forum as one of their clients. So they do the media for Klaus Schwab's gang. They invented a story that I defrauded a woman called Angela Musso, right? Who I've never met in my life. I don't even know whether she's real. She might be invented as well. And allegedly, according to this article, she gave me money for services that I never provided to her, and I defrauded her. I've never met her. I don't provide services. But they put that in. It's all over the internet. This Open Democracy. It's a big media company worldwide, and it's all over the place. So I took them on in the High Court in 2024 for libel, and they turned it round. The court turned it round and made me the defendant, and then issued a costs order. And worse than that, they issued something called a civil constraint order. Now, what people might think, well, what the hell is that? What that means is, in the legal system in Great Britain, I cannot serve any case as a plaintiff or as a defendant. I cannot serve any paperwork in any courtroom because there's a civil constraint order against me.
So that's a denial of due process.
Yeah. So because they did that, and because I'm a church envoy, I can go straight to the European Court. Now, they might rig it. It might be rigged. They might rig the case at The Hague, the international criminal case. They might rig them both. They might have so much power they can rig everything everywhere. But the public, who are very supportive, certainly the Notebook Freedom members and the nationals of the Republic of Old Souls are very supportive. I get very, very big numbers coming on my webinars when I'm explaining all this. How are they going to combat a Netflix documentary of the last 20 years? So my little small documentary, which is soon to come out, called The Disruptor, if that gets enough people watching it, it's going to go on Netflix. And that's really what I'm doing this for, is a platform to wake a few more people up, and to show them that there is a way out of this matrix. You can't beat it, but you can operate separately from it. And you have reasonable chance of surviving it. First of all, you've got to recognize it exists, which is the biggest problem for most people, I think. Once you've recognized it exists, then you need to have a plan of how you're going to survive your way through it. You can't fight it, because they're too powerful to fight against. So you do what the Amish do, what the Church of Scientology does, you just operate separately from it.
Right.
And then you do all the other stuff to take you out of the transhumanism agenda and the poison and the depopulation agenda and all that stuff. And that's basically what I'm doing. And I'm doing it 7 days a week because I love it.
If enough people do it, then they have no power.
Exactly. And I think that's what we need to do, is we need to come together. We need to come together as a community. There's a lot out there that are looking for freedom from the matrix. And a lot of people are talking a lot of nonsense. A lot of people are egoically fighting each other in this truth, freedom space, whatever you want to call it.
There's lots of trolls.
Yeah. And there's lots of trolls, there's lots of plants, there's lots of psyops.
Right.
I'll let people judge for themselves. But come and have a look at what we're doing. There's genuine, there's genuine light energy intent behind what we're doing. Definitely is. Yeah. To me, it's a battle. It's a battlefield of light and dark. It always has been. They've revealed their hand. We know what they're doing. We know how they're doing it. They don't make any secret of it. If you're awake, you know. Yeah. It's
diabolically evil.
It's next level diabolical. You can't even imagine how dark it is.
Yeah.
And I was listening to the guy who's an expert on AI. What's his name? I'll post his name afterwards. I can't remember the name. My memory is one of the things that is taken a beating over the years for names. But when you get into what they're doing, what they're really doing with AI, what they're really doing with the Internet of Things and the nanobots and the digital concentration camp stuff, when you really get into that, I mean, that's just like, wow. That's not even that. That's non-human intelligence that's running that thing, in my opinion. That's not some guys in a secret society that are, smoking cigars, drinking brandy, coming up with their next evil plan. This is next level stuff. DARPA, next level stuff.
Yeah, all we can do is hope we get some divine intervention on our behalf.
Well, I think we've got to tap into consciousness, and all the answers are there.
Right.
There's nothing new under the sun. That's a very wise statement. There's nothing new, but you just got to bring the pieces together and make a plan, and that's what I'm trying to do. A lot of people are tuned into it, and I don't think I don't know how many years we've got until this whole thing is so dark that you can't get out of it. It's definitely closing in very rapidly, in my opinion.
I think people are waking up in droves. I'm at an extraordinary science conference in New Mexico right now, and it's amazing how many engineers and scientists are waking up to this stuff. And so, it's the more they squeeze, the more it slips through their fingers.
I think that their agenda is behind the curve. They're behind the timeline. I think they wanted to be further ahead than they are. If you look at the IMF's papers, if you look at the World Economic Forum's papers, UN Agenda 2030, it was 21. They moved it back. They're moving it back. Everything that Soros and Bill Gates are doing isn't quite going the way they want. Zuckerberg's plan and the metaverse isn't quite going the way they want. They've got a lot of things that aren't really going the way they want them to go, but they haven't stopped. And the AI, to me, and what they're doing through Trump and all those guys that think Trump's their hero, I really wish I could sit them down and show them what's going on really with Trump. Trump and Musk are definitely not your friends. Absolutely not your friends. And I might lose. A load of people might turn off now and think, oh, you've lost it now because Trump's my hero. But you've got to look into what's running Trump's agenda. And it's definitely not to help the US population. There's no way he's there to help anyone. Not a chance.
I guess we'll see. I kind of like Trump, but I think that he's in a pretty deep swamp, and but I've heard that there's going to be some arrests here pretty soon too. So I've heard that there's a friend of mine that I did an amicus curiae for because and you might want to check into this with your stuff too, because there's a Supreme Court cases that talk about how there has to be implementing regulations for a criminal statute under federal, like money laundering. And if you look up that statute in the parallel table of authorities, there's no regulations. And so then the Supreme Court has said that these statutes are void for vagueness. And so I filed an amicus curiae on behalf of someone who's in prison in Chicago, and it's coming out on the news that the FBI is up there arresting U.S. attorneys and judges, and so I'm expecting him to get released here pretty soon. And so
that's
we'll
incredible.
see.
Well done.
So again, you gotta bring up the right issues. he's got a weaponization working group in the Department of Justice. They're trying to get rid of this weaponization. I know a guy that Trump was charged with felonies before he was elected in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia and also in the Southern District of Florida. And this guy filed amicus curiae on his behalf, showing that those statutes are void for vagueness. And so he got a copy, and his lawyers got a copy. And I can tell you, the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia unfiled it because they said they don't have a rule that allows them to accept it. And so, but the lawyers all got it, and the charges were dropped for Trump, and that's what. So you're exposing it's actually a malicious prosecution is what it is, and now they're starting to go after that Smith, that was the prosecutor in Trump's case, and so it's there's stuff that's happening. It's behind the scenes, and so we'll see. That's all I can say. But I know that you hear stuff on the news, and this amicus curiae is really powerful. This guy filed it. It was something that was developed by Robert Fox. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
I want to believe that a politician somewhere in the world is actually going to make a difference for the voters. I want to believe it, but I've never seen any evidence of it. And I've been around 60 years. I've yet to see any politician anywhere in the world actually do what they say they're going to do. Either they can't because it's impossible to do it, or they never had any intention in the first place to do it. And if you look behind who's financing Trump and all of the Israeli stuff that's going on behind the scenes, I want to believe that he's got good intentions, but I struggle badly with it. And only time will tell. But he has got a lot of people who support him these days, for sure. He's got a massive media sort of movement, and he's got a lot of people following him, and he's done it really well on that. And I want to see him make a difference. But as soon as he says he's going to put in, 500 billion into AI, I mean, just look at that, man. What are they really going to be doing with that stuff? Because that AI is it's the beast system. Stop Project Stargate. Have a look at it. It's the beast system.
My son is a computer science. He's got a master's degree in computer science in artificial intelligence, and he's working for the government in a program he can't even talk to me about. But but he says that a computer is a machine. It executes commands, and so artificial intelligence just draws on a database that's already existing. And so at any rate, there's nothing wrong with a good, healthy skepticism. Everybody should be a good, healthy skeptic. Make people prove what they're saying. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm completely on board with you about that. And I love what you're doing. I've seen a lot of people out there with their unproven theories that do nothing but get people into trouble. And I've been on some of your webinars. Sorry?
After many years of things not working, and I've been very open about that, and I've told people why things haven't worked, we're now got programs that are working. And this is why the Crown is really going for me, because they know we're right over the target. If I was talking nonsense and everything we're doing is never going to work, they wouldn't bother with me, would they?
That's right.
They are. This is the highest level. This goes up to the King, the Prime Minister, the Attorney General, all of the head honchos of the Crown. They're all reporting to the Vatican. We know that. And they've put a big team on this to try and silence me and put me in jail. Why would they bother doing that? If I'm a crackpot, if no one's going to join together with what we're doing and get benefit from it, they would just think, well, he's an idiot. He'll just flash and burn after a while. But right. The thing is, the Matrix Freedom membership is growing. More and more people are getting remedy. And they're obviously very worried about it because they don't want that sort of thing going on, do they?
Right. It's brilliant. And you get results. I got to say, you get results. and so that's why I like Matrix Freedom and what you're doing, and that's why I'm networking with you about this, because I think that this is something that can benefit everybody, and this is not unproven theories. You do a lot of research. Like, I love your stuff about the diplomatic passport. I saw that video on it, and that was great. And so I mean, it's all in their regulations and their codes. If you know where to find it, you just got to look for it. It's buried in there in millions of codes.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Williams is a guy I'm sure you know. He's done a lot of research.
I've heard of him, yeah.
It's all like in their codes. It's all in plain sight. Most people don't look for it because they're brainwashed not to. And those that are bright enough to look for it don't really spend enough time on it. They're not motivated enough to do it. Well, you get somebody who's got a little bit of intelligence, who's very motivated to do it, then you start to find out all the answers. And that's what's happening with me. You know, some people say I've got the ability to understand things. And I think, you know, when you look into what I'm doing, I think you probably would agree with that. Brandon Williams, he was pushed, you know, wasn't not at the level I've been pushed, but he was pushed into it. He starts to look into it. So you've got to be motivated, and you've got to be able to join the dots up, and you've got to have that tenacious spirit of never giving up. And every obstacle, you just believe that there's a solution for it, which is what I always believe. And no one's ever going to tell me otherwise, because I believe there's everything has a solution. And if you go into it with that, you can't lose, can you? Because all you can do is learn something that's going to take you to the next level. If it doesn't work out, okay, fine, you learn, you go to another level, and then you find something that does work. So there is no such thing as failure, in my opinion. It's just a way of learning. And we've all been learning a lot, and I'm sure there's lots more to learn. But there are things that we're doing right now: infinite money, recouping your bank payments, voiding, discharging, and settling your mortgage, and then recouping the mortgage security, and getting free of the matrix by moving up above it in terms of international law with the envoy for the church and the diplomatic community for the sovereign nation. That, to me, just those three things there, that should be enough for a lot of people to get them started.
Right. Right. And it's all coming from the Vatican. So the idea that it works the same way in the UK as it does in the US is perfectly legitimate. And Canada.
I do a One World webinar. I did it like 2 years ago. I used to do live stand-up. I broke it all down, go back hundreds of years, put all these things together. It's one system. Right. Everything is central to the United States. The District of Columbia is the commerce, is the center of the commerce game. And all the securities, all registered under the DTCC in Waterbury Lane. Get that, right? It's all currency. It's all Waterbury Lane. Yeah, they couldn't make it any more friggin' obvious, could they? That's where all the securities are. It's everything. And people say, "Oh yeah, but I'm in Poland." I say, "Yeah, Poland is just a sub-corporation of the United States." Yeah, but I'm in Russia. But so is Russia. Don't forget all this nonsense about let's go to war with Russia. It's all one commerce system.
It's all coming from the Vatican.
Yeah, of course it does. 100%. Couldn't agree more. Glenn, it's been really interesting. I'm conscious that we've been on 1 hour 43. I'm sure
I'll tell you, it's kind of.
Are these guys going to wrap it up?
Yeah. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Well, I want to do it again. And what I'd love to do, if you've got followers of your channels that want me to do a bespoke webinar on anything I've talked about, in the remedies, I'd love to do that. So if you thought you could get enough people together, I can put it on. I can go through it structured. And, I think we found that to be a really good format for breaking it down and getting it to the level where people can, to understand what is it, how does it work, and why does it work, and then see some evidence of it working. So if you wanted to do that, I'd be very happy. I quite enjoy the webinars because it's You know, when you do a lot of research and then you're talking about the research you've done, there's a bit of pleasure in there for me. So I'd be very happy to do webinars if you thought that you had an audience that would be interested.
Okay, well, that's something to consider. We'll see what happens with this one, and I think it's a good idea to. I like webinars for sure, and you've got a huge resource.
Live, we beam it out to your channels, and if people that want to join it can join it. You know, it's no big hoo-ha about it. They can join, or they, you know, if there's enough people interested, we do it at a time where people have got, you know, they're not driving or they're not working or whatever it is they're doing. We've done that before, and you've been quite surprised how many people join them.
You've also got a whole bunch of webinars already on your website, Matrix Freedom. I recommend everybody should go there and check it out, and consider being part of the Republic of Old Souls. There's lots of great information there, and you can learn how to start freeing yourself. If we all have to do it on our own, it's like voting with your feet, and you just have to take some steps. They've gone and basically enslaved everybody on the planet, and but we can all walk away from it and just quit participating, and the Republic of Old Souls is one way that you can do it, and he's laid the foundations, done a lot of the groundwork, so that saves you having to do a lot of that stuff, and network with like-minded people. I mean, that is so important. Just the networking.
We did a conference a couple of years ago, and you know, some hardcore members came, and it was one of the best days I've ever had, because the energy of those that came together who were on a similar frequency, the energy, there's a great big, it was a big conference center. The energy was awesome, because the energies are aligned. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
That's what we're building. You know, it's quite lonely out there when you know what's going on, and most people you meet have no idea what's going on, and you start talking about it, stick their hand up and don't think you're a crazy guy. So, to get together with others that are like-minded and they come together, that's part of this. And also the other thing that's worth mentioning is we don't just sell courses. We're not saying, hey, buy our course and off you go. No, we facilitate everything. We couldn't make it any easier to set all these things up.
Right. You help them through the whole process. Matter of fact, some of you actually do. So it depends on what level of help you want. But I know that some of it you actually do, and then just get a piece of the action, basically. Anyways, I guess we should wrap this up. It's getting close to 2 hours now, but it's really been really nice talking to you, Ian. And these kangaroo courts are everywhere, and it's all a charade. This amicus curiae, I can send you a word file for this amicus curiae if you want. It's based on U.S. law, but you might be able to find similar stuff in UK law that would make the same kind of arguments. I know void for vagueness. I know they have that doctrine in Canada for sure. So I'm sure it goes back to the UK. And so that's where you need to go with it, in my opinion, that it's void for vagueness. But you're going to have to do a bunch of research.
It's prerogative writs. They all stem back to, basically they come back to when the church and the state got together. They had these prerogative writs, but they're not really recognized. In my situation, I tried all that, writ of certiorari, writ of mandamus. I even, tried to invoke, basically prove that you've got any standing whatsoever, all the notices, all based on prerogative writs. You see, this is the problem. They just ignore it all because they railroad. If they want to railroad it, they just railroad it. It doesn't matter what you serve. It doesn't matter who serves it. They're just going to railroad it. But they don't fuck with the church. And I'll leave you with that thought. So get yourself into a church.
Yeah, a lot of times they don't follow their own codes. It's amazing how many times they don't follow their own codes, and that's what I like to get them on too, because you can get them on that too. Anyways, Ian, thanks for the very interesting and enlightening discussion, and we'll have to do it again. And set up. I'll see what the interest is setting up a webinar. And maybe we'll do that one too another time, where we can invite a bunch of people and get some interest that way too.
That's what I'm doing, and I want people to watch The Disruptor. I want them to help me with the movement of fighting the Crown, which is basically fighting the Vatican on their own turf, and get enough people behind it, and then we can start turning the tables.
Right. All right. Well, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers, Glenn. Enjoyed it.
All right. Take care.